Hey guys, welcome to The Refined Savage. Today on the show we have Ashley Muffet, Coach Ashley Muffet from the Ohio State University, head throws coach out there. She's doing some amazing things. You can listen to some of the stuff we talk about as far as conjugate programming for throwers, how she does her recruiting, and all the awesome things she's doing at Ohio State. This was a really good conversation. Check it out. See ya. Ashley, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So, the first time I ever saw you was probably early 2000s. You were throwing for, is it North Canton or North Canton Hoover?
North Canton Hoover, yep.
North Canton Hoover. And I was coaching a girl from Bay Village who was Division II. And I remember telling her, I said, if you ever go up against this girl, we're screwed. So let's just stay in the Division
I remember her. What's her name?
Kelly Moore.
Kelly Moore, yeah. And then she ended up going to Yale.
She
right?
did. She did.
Yep,
She didn't throw too long there, but she ended up going to Yale. So I remember you in high school, and I didn't even know that you had gotten a job here at Ohio State. Where have you been since the last time I saw you in high school?
Wow, since high school. So high school, after high school I went to Ashland, and I ended up going to Ashland for only a semester, and that was kind of like a different situation. I mean, a lot of people know that I have like a relationship with Judd. Obviously, Judd and I went to the same high school. So I always tell everybody I knew who Judd was before I knew what a hammer was. And that's really the truth. I tell people all the time, like I remember being in 8th grade art class and making this banner that said, "Good luck, Judd, at the Olympics." And it had a hammer on it. And it was like this ball and a wire and a handle. And I went home and I asked my parents, I was like, what is a hammer? Right. And they like tried to explain to me like what a hammer was, and I like couldn't understand it. I'm like, why can't we do it? Why can't I see one? And they're like, it's too dangerous. Like maybe in high school you'll be able to see one. I had no idea.
Right.
And that wasn't like a time where you could just like do a quick YouTube search and like see it.
Yeah,
so
right. That was still pretty early in the whole YouTube
definitely
thing.
Like it wasn't really around at all when I was in high school, but so I've known Judd and his family since I was probably 12 years old. Like, I went to prom with Nate, Judd's son.
Okay.
Yeah, we graduated together, so we were, like, in the same friend group. So, I ended up going to Ashland out of high school. I visited some big schools, North Carolina, South Carolina, Miami, Florida, and then I ended up going to Ashland.
What did you throw, 47?
So I threw 50 feet 10 in the shot, and I broke the state record, and then I threw 162 in the disc.
Okay.
And then I ended up actually winning, at the time, called the Nike meet, now the New Balance meet, in the hammer, which was sort of random, but I went to Ashland, and I love Ashland, I love Judd and everything. I felt like I needed to go to a little bit bigger place. Like, Ashland and my high school were about the same size.
Sure.
So I ended up transferring at semester, and I went to Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
And at Kentucky, I was under Doug Reynolds, and he did a really good job coaching me. I think he's one of the best rotational coaches in the country, so I was there for 5 years.
Because you were a glider in high school, right?
I was a glider in high school, and I was a glider until I glided all the way through my freshman season indoor. And then we were getting ready for nationals, and I was, at the time, you didn't know if they were going to take 16 or 18 people to nationals, and I was tied for 17th. And so we were like, the list came out on like a Tuesday, and so on Monday we were in the field house, and I was like, the boys were like, let's see if you can spin, like, let's see if Muff can spin, and my coach was like, I'm not going to take my 52-foot freshman glider and make her a 47-foot rotator. I was like, well, just see. So I started throwing, and I was throwing maybe like 50 feet, and he was like, yeah, see, like, I'm not going to take my 52-foot girl and make her a 50-foot shot putter. And I was like, well, that's the 10. And then literally in that moment, like, he literally said to me, if you make nationals, you're going to spin. Like, there's no going back. And he was serious. So, like, the next meet, my first meet outdoor, I was gliding or spinning. That's exactly how it went for me.
Yeah, I tried to transition in Highland Games from the glide coming out of high school and learning to spin. But if you always have that glide in your back pocket, you'll go back and forth and back and forth. So you need that coach to say, if you're going to spin, you're going to spin.
Yeah, and I think that was good that he like kind of like laid it down for me, because I see, especially high school kids, they go back and forth when like one isn't going well. And I think that the best way I've heard that whole thing explained was from Judd, and he was like, learning to spin in the shot is like doing a card trick in your bedroom at 1 o'clock in the morning where you're trying to take a whole deck of cards from your right hand to your left hand, and you finally do it, and you're like, I did it. And then your friends are like, oh, you did it? Well, like, let me see you do it then. And then you can't do it.
Yeah.
Because it's just like the thing about going from the glide to the spin is it's just there's so many more complexities. Like it's such a more detailed movement. And so, like, where you think you were in the glide, you don't feel it the same way in the rotation. And sometimes it's like you have beginner's luck.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what happened to me. I threw really far. My freshman year, I ended up throwing like 54 feet. And I got second at SECs. And then my sophomore year, I had like a really great season. I threw like 57. And then I had like literally a solid probably year and a half where I just like really struggled.
Yeah.
Where I was just trying to like understand it. And I just like wasn't catching it, you know. And then my senior year I ended up doing better, getting second at nationals. But I definitely feel the pain for some of those people that transition from the glide to the spin, and just, you know, it's just, I think it's, and I even think it's more difficult for like the women. I think that's just, I think that at the front it just feels a lot different. So I totally can relate to that for sure.
Yeah, the glide you're not really loading up, but it feels like you're loading up as you're waiting for that left to drop,
right?
As opposed to the rotation where it's so fluid, and
exactly.
You just have to hit that timing just perfectly.
No, definitely. Yeah, I mean, like, the thing is, Doug used to say, my college coach would say, like, everybody has like a go-to move. So like when you're watching a high school kid and they're backed into a corner, it's like if you need a throw, most of these kids know there's something that they feel like they can go to get a throw. Right. Whether it's go faster, whether it's hit the front harder, you know. And when you're rotating, your go-to move is going to be completely different than it was when you were gliding. And I think that for me, that was one of the hardest things that I ever had to learn, was just where I could rely on when. You know, like, when can I go fast? When can I not? When can I strike? When can I not? And I think that until you really understand that, I think it's hard to be consistent as a rotator.
Sure. Even when you do understand it, it's hard to be consistent.
For sure. No doubt.
Yeah, it's such a hard thing for people to learn. And I think, in my opinion, that maybe next to the pole vault and the hammer throw, it is probably the most technical event, not just in track and field, but in sport. It's the most complex thing you can do as an athlete, is to learn that rotational shot put, and the ball is so close to you.
There's no forgiveness.
There's no forgiveness,
and that's the thing. Like, you know, you can make some mistakes in the discus, and if you have some levers, or if you're moving pretty fast, like, you can kind of get away with some things. Like on, you know, to be like moderately competitive, you can't do that at like, you know, on a world class level. But in the shot, like you're saying, like the second you get open at all, it's like it's game over.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, that's definitely something I had to learn. But after I finished up at Kentucky, I spent a year in Columbus, and I was working in sales, trying to decide what I was going to do. I had a couple coaching job opportunities, but it was just like one of those things where I was going to have to be a GA, and I didn't really know if I didn't want to not have any money at all. So I worked in sales here, and I made some money and saved up, and then I got a job as a graduate assistant at Murray State, which is a small Division I in like far west Kentucky. So I was there for a year. And then I was at Western Kentucky for 2 years. And when I was there, I had a girl who just got second at USA's. Her name's Jessica Ramsey. She'd thrown 49 feet when I got her, and I had her for 3 semesters. So I had her for outdoor her junior year, and then her full senior year, and she ended up going from 49 feet to 57 feet in the shot.
Wow.
Yeah, she led the country for 5 weeks. She was a freak. I mean, she made the final in Florida, in the biggest division in Florida, in the shot, the disc, and the 100.
And the 100.
She's like very, very special, extremely wired, and her and I just really connected really well. And so then after I left Western Kentucky, she wanted to come over here with me, and I was not interested in that at the time. I just had to get things going over here.
Yeah.
And so she went over with John Smith. At the time, he was at Southern Illinois, and I'm really good friends with him. And he took her, and from there, she's gone from 57 to 63 feet in the shot. So she's really doing well. And then I ended up here after my 3rd year of coaching. So this is going into my 5th year at Ohio State and my 8th year of Division I.
Wow. So you've been how long here at Ohio State?
I just started my 5th year.
See, now I just see, this is how far I've been out of the loop. So when Judd told me you were the coach down here, and that name clicked, I said, I remember her from high school. I had kind of assumed that you had just gotten the job, so I didn't know you'd been here for a while.
It's really crazy that I've been here for as long as I have, because I feel like it doesn't really seem like that long. And it definitely doesn't seem like I've been coaching for 8 years. You know, I mean, like that's like, you know, all of high school and all of college combined is 8 years, you know, so it's gone really quickly. When I got here, we had just combined, the men and the women's staff had just combined. Mm-hmm. So prior to me being here, it was separate men, separate women, and there was no full-time throws coach for the women. So Jackie Jessling was their volunteer throws coach, and she was one of Judd's,
insane to me.
obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, the way that it works is when you have a split program, which I don't even know that anybody has a split program anymore, because Michigan was separate and they combined, Minnesota was separate and they just combined, and I literally don't know if anybody at this point is separate anymore.
Yeah.
And it was like kind of a trend for a while. I mean, there was a point where when I was in college where like universities were having completely separate like ADs, completely separate athletic departments in general. Like I remember like Tennessee and Arkansas had like completely separate facilities, completely separate athletic directors. Like when we would go there, there'd be a weight room for the women that had all women's bars. Like it was just everybody was separate. And then the thing was, when you're separate, you can only have 3 coaches that are paid. Okay, so you're missing something. Like you need a throws coach, you need a distance coach, you need a jumps coach, and then you need a sprints coach. So even right there, that's 4. You don't get and so you don't get it. So the women at Ohio State, it was a jumps coach, head coach was a sprints coach, and then they had a distance coach. So the volunteer was the throws coach. And so that's just like what it was. Like you just kind of decide what you're going to specialize in.
Yeah.
And then you hire that way. So then everybody else is a volunteer. So then when we combined, Coach Dennis, who's the director of track and field here, she was the women's head coach, and then she got the head job. And so she brought me in, and she brought Joel Brown in, who was an athlete here. He was a professional for like 11 years. And a hurdler, really great hurdler, world class. And then he became the assistant sprints. So I'm the assistant sprints. We have a jumps coach. We have 2 distance coaches. We have like head cross country coach who also does middle distance, and then the distance coach. So you get way more. You have more people on staff.
Sure, yeah.
You know, it just makes a lot more sense to be combined. So I was really like lucky and thankful to be able to have the opportunity to be, you know, because like it hadn't been combined here since Kevin was here.
Right.
You know, and so. And the women hadn't had a full-time coach since Kevin was here.
That's what's crazy about it is that Jackie's here coaching as a volunteer at Ohio State University.
Right.
But I mean, if that was the rule that you
Well,
had
I mean, and I think that's like the biggest misconception. Like everybody's like, well, why can't they just pay her? And it's like, well, it's really not about money. Like you literally, the NCAA rule is you can't have more than 3 paid.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's just like what it was. So when I got here, the women there were 2 women, two thrower women, and like a freshman girl that had come in, and it was, you know, it was definitely like not like I left Western Kentucky and I had 3 girls that threw over 173 feet in the discus.
Right.
I mean that's like over 52 meters in the discus at Western Kentucky. 3 girls that threw over 63 and a half feet in the weight. Like the women that I left at Western Kentucky and what I walked into here was like, I mean, I couldn't believe it. You know,
why would you go to a school that only had a volunteer coach at that time? Even if they were, I mean, Jackie was obviously fantastic.
Definitely. I mean, and that's just the thing, though. Like, the thing was, like, Ohio State, they'd won the Big Ten, you know, and, like, even before Jackie was here, Rita Summerlot was here. Rita was, like, with USATF and development and stuff, so there was somebody here, like, and, I mean, there was a point where I think that they scored, like, 38 points in the throws. They had, like, Alexis Thomas, Maggie Mullins.
Alexis,
there were people over here that were, you know, and that's just the thing. Like, that's the power of the brand here. People want to go to school here. This is always one of the top 20 public institutions in the country. Like, I tell recruits, like, we had 47,000 applicants for our freshman class, and we admitted 7,000 people. We turned 40,000 people away. You know, I mean, and that's just the thing about being here. Like, because of that, they're able to be, like, super selective about who they bring in like, every capacity, not just athletics. Like, our incoming average ACT was, like, a 29.5. I mean, out of 36. So it's, like, it's just, there are a lot of factors, a lot of things that go on here that make it a very desirable place for people to want to be.
Yeah.
And I feel like, especially if you're a thrower from Ohio, there's a lot of, like, perks about being here. You know, and we've had some pretty good success. I think that since I've been here, we've had 8 Big Ten champions in the throws and 8 first-team All-Americans. You know, I have Sade Olotoye here. She won Division I she won the shot twice and the disc once. She's been Big Ten Athlete of the Year, 2 times All-American in the weight, and she's top 10 of all time in NCAA history in the weight.
That's amazing.
You know, yeah. So I mean, things are definitely like have gotten better. I've had 2 guys over 20 meters in the shot. We've won the shot in the Big Ten 4 times. JC won twice, and Nick won twice. So I mean, things are definitely getting better. But I mean, the standard is high, you know?
Sure.
The standard's high. Like, we won the Big Ten. The men won indoor and outdoor. It was the first time that Ohio State men have won the Big Ten in 25 years.
Is that right?
In 25 years, and we were 12th at nationals.
Wow.
So like that's like the direction that we've wanted to be moving towards, and in some ways that was like a goal for us. But at the same time, it's like once you achieve certain things, you're like, that's the standard now. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the standard. So for me here now, if I don't have guys that are throwing 20 meters, it's like it's not good enough.
Well, it sounds like the culture has changed, and like I told you, I hadn't been back to this building since John Smith was here. So that was, I don't know, 15 years ago.
Right, 2005, like 2004.
Yeah. So it sounds like the culture, which at the time, I think, just listening to John, and he didn't say it, but you could just kind of tell that the culture was maybe not the best opportunity for a coach, to do well here. But it sounds like you've got a group in here now with a totally different mindset, and it's more conducive to getting athletes in here, not just sprinters, but throwers and jumpers and everybody else. And it sounds like you guys are on the same page.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. The thing about it is, it's like, the bottom line is when we went to Big Tens and we won, it's like 65 or 70% of our points were from the sprinters. Like our sprinters are really good. Like if you think about it, like this is an urban campus in the Big Ten, and there aren't that many urban campuses of the Big Ten. Yeah. And like it's so because of that, like we draw a certain appeal that other institutions in the Big Ten can't draw. So it's like everyone always says, and I'm somebody that said this in my life before, like Ohio State should have so many throwers, they should do this, they should do that with throws before I got here. And it's like, that's fine, but like distance runners want to come here, sprinters want to come here, throwers want to come here, jumpers want to come here. So it's like, we see it from a direction of like, this should be a sprint school, or this should be a throw school, or this should be this school. But it's like, at the end of the day, I believe that because of what the state provides us, the state of Ohio is good at everything. We're really good at the throws. Yep. We are really good at the throws. We're really good at a lot of field events. Our distance is pretty solid, and we have some sprinters. But it's like, because of like what this state is, we can be whatever we want to be. And so what we've done and what we've been to be successful and to win championships is we've had a little bit of everything. We've had representation from the throws. We've had representation from the jumps. Like we had a national champion in the long jump last year. Yeah. Our 4x1 was second at nationals. Nick, my shot put guy, was third, not this past season, but the year before that. So it's just like one of those things. What it comes down to, and what people don't really understand, it's like it's a matter of preference. You know what I'm saying? And it's at the head coach's discretion on like how you're going to load the team up. And I think the thing is, it's like the bottom line is my mentality. It's like if I'm here and if I was successful at Western Kentucky, or like at least moderately successful in like certain ways, especially for like the level that is, there's like literally no excuse in any capacity why I shouldn't be successful at Ohio State.
Well, it's a good way to come in and be very confident in yourself.
Well, people want to come here. Right. You know what I'm saying? So it's like you have to get people here. You have to go out and recruit. You have to show them that this is a good place where they can come in and develop and get better. So like for me, like if we're not good at the throws, that's on me. Like no matter what, that's on me.
Yeah, because you'll get the athletes. You'll get the people wanting to come
Right,
now.
Right.
But that might not have been it's not just the campus. You kind of have to take that a little bit on yourself too, because like I said, I didn't know you had been here for a few years, but let's say my son was a lot older, and he's coming out of college or coming out of high school. Years ago, I don't think I would have steered him to come here to be a thrower. There would have been other places I would have pushed him. But now with you being here, you bring a layer of, hey, she's done this before. She's had success as an athlete. She's had success as a coach, even in a place like Western Kentucky, where I'm guessing people aren't breaking down the door to go to Western Kentucky, unless they're from that area. It would be a whole different story. You're starting to build a program that hopefully you'll be here for a long time and people will want to aspire to get to.
For sure. I mean, like, the thing was at Western Kentucky, like I said, that my girl Jessica Ramsey, like when I got to Western Kentucky, there were legitimately 0 women. Mm-hmm. It was 0 women, not one. And they just didn't have throwers. Yeah. So when I got there, like I got Jessica, I got 2 girls at semesters that were transfers. And then they had pretty good seasons. And then the next year, like if you would have looked at, like, I don't think that at the time there was nobody else in the country that had 3 girls throwing as far as I did in the weight. Yeah, 3 girls throwing that far in the discus. And then Jessica was throwing the shot at the time. I mean, Jessica had thrown like 57 and I had 2 other girls like over 50 feet. And it was a great group. Like I recruited pretty hard and I got good athletes, and
Right.
they hadn't done that type of training that we were doing, and they got way better, like, fast.
Right.
And so, the thing about it is, it's like, when I came over here, I knew that it was very critical that we, like, got things going, like, right away. And like I said, like, it's just something, like, you can't back down from it. Like, you have to just, like, keep going towards it and be resilient. And the thing is, like, at this point, with, like, what we've been able to have, I tell people, I'm like, we have, since I've been here, I haven't had a year where I haven't had a 20-meter shot putter. So, like,
amazing.
that, I mean, and the thing is, I mean, that might, this year we're going to be down. There's no doubt about it. But like I said, like, the standard is 20 meters.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm recruiting a high school kid, like, if I don't think that you can get to 20 meters, then it's not helping. And with how good the Big Ten is, like, you have to throw over 61 feet to even basically make the final or score. Like, I had a boy that just graduated from Cleveland, and he threw maybe right at 60 feet in high school. And he was like 225, like, he wasn't that big. He ended up getting maybe to 245 or something like that, but he was small compared to, like, the 320-pound guy I had that won the thing. And he threw 1850 something, and he got 7th in the Big Ten. Like, at Western Kentucky, he would have won, he would have won the meet back when. So it's just the level is so high, and if you're going to be good in the Big Ten, you're going to be good in the nation. Like, 5 guys from the Big Ten were top 8 at nationals in the discus, a cold weather event.
Sure, right.
And like, we're in a cold weather conference, and they're throwing an outdoor event, and they're top 5 in the country. Like, my freshman boy Chance, he threw the discus 184 feet at Big Tens, and he didn't score a point. He's number 2 in Big Ten. He's number 2 in Ohio State history in the discus behind Dan Taylor, who was a national champion, and he didn't score a single point at Big Tens. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's
brutal.
just, that's what it is, But like, I'm the thing that I'm saying to people, like, when we're recruiting, like, we have a lot of resources over here that I think that are like really helpful to us. Like, obviously, like, Joe and I are getting married in November, so having somebody here that has an Olympic medal and a world championship, like, that is a valuable asset. Like, he trains here, so seeing what that's like every single day, like, I think that's one of the reasons that is one of the reasons I went to Ashland. Like, at the time when I was coming out of high school, they had Ashland Elite over there. Mm-hmm. So, like, there were like 14 throwers that were training for the Olympics that I saw.
Ashland Elite?
I mean, like, Ashland Elite was everything, like, that's just like, but I mean, that was stuff like that just doesn't really exist anymore. Right. Like, you don't see that. Like, I was in high school, and I would have my high school practice at North Canton Hoover, and I would be done, and I would see Judd roll up in his purple Ford Ranger, and I was like, all right, Ashland might be coming up here to train. And then a few minutes later, I'd see Adrian Blewett and, like, a couple other people that would come, and they would literally have shot put practice at Hoover, and because Judd lived a mile down the road. So I would, like, sit there and watch them throw. Like, I remember, like, my whole big thing in high school was trying to break 50 feet. Like, I wanted to break the state record. I wanted to throw 50 feet. Yeah. And, like, I thought that was cool, and, like, obviously I thought that was, like, good in like, terms of what, like, high school good is. But, like, at the same time, like, Adrian threw 60 feet the year I threw 50, so I didn't really think it was that big of a deal. And that's the thing. Like, I think it's really important to see people that are better than you on a consistent basis, so you understand, like, that you're not there yet.
And it's important to see the horsepower, because as a high school thrower, until you get in the same, and you can't even see it on YouTube, you have to be in the same area, like standing next to the circle, and see, like, Joe coming through with that kind of speed, because you don't realize that exists. You don't realize that level is out there. So when I went down and started hanging out at Ashland, John McEwen was there in the weight, and he was an incredibly explosive guy, and Judd was training for the 2000 Olympics, and until I had gone down there and watched those two, or watched Adrian throw, I had never seen that kind of pop and movement before, and it changed everything about the way I threw. It was like, oh, there's a whole nother level here you need to get to. And like you said, having Joe down here where, some freshman kid can come out who was a 64-foot high school shot putter, and then now they've got a 16-pound ball, and they realize, oh my God, this guy's moving way faster than I did, even with a 12-pound ball.
Exactly. I mean, and that's the thing. I think I've definitely, like, we've started attracting the 5'11" shot putters. That's definitely been a thing that I've seen since Joe's been here. Yeah. But, the thing about Joe that is like kind of unique. So he threw 57 feet as a junior, which is not bad, but it's not like, it's not like world breaking. And then he threw his like last couple meets. I think he ended up throwing 65 feet, which was good. I mean, he was top 3 in the country, but it wasn't like he wasn't like Ryan Whiting. He wasn't throwing like 70 feet. He didn't like break the Pennsylvania state record or anything like that. You know, he wasn't Geist.
Yeah.
And you know, the thing about him was he has like a weird type of strength. Like he has like obviously like very high like 1-rep maxes, and his numbers and his lifts are all great, but like he has a very unique ability to like create separation and like stay taut throughout the throw. And I think that that's one of the things that like that's like one of his X factors, you know. And I don't think that people like really can understand it like until you see it and like understand that he practices it, and like the way that he talks about like parts of the throw where like he literally physically is like hurting himself, like it hurts him to do it, you know. And so like being able to see that at that level, I mean, because obviously like there are only 5 guys in the history of the world that have thrown the shot put farther than Joe, 5 or 6 I guess at this point. But I mean, less than 10 people in the world have ever thrown as far as he has. So just being able to see what he can do and being able to see like how he applies force and like power in his throw is definitely different than even the 66-foot guys that I've coached.
He gets some incredible separation for a guy who's as thick in the upper body as he is.
He's like strangely mobile. Like he's not stiff. Like especially like east to west type of separation and like mobility, very impressive. Like very impressive. Even like things like touching his toes, or like I've seen him do some like gymnastics type stuff, like rolling, and like it's very like he's very pliable for as you don't usually see that in a guy that strong, because usually when you get that strong you're like losing mobility and range. But like it's very unique. You know, like, and the thing is like when I started watching him like last year, I was just like watching because I didn't really know what to expect, like in terms of like the little minute things that he could do. But just like being able to see what he does, it's like I think I realized what made him different even than some guys that I've seen that were like at a moderately. I mean, like the thing is, if you throw over 20 meters, like you're top 35 in the world. In this country, you're like top 20. Yep. You know what I'm saying? But like you're pretty good. But what he can do and like the way that he is compared to the other 2 guys I've had that have thrown 20, it's just like a completely different wheelhouse.
Right. Yeah. Used to be 20 meters was the benchmark. You'd see guys go to big meets from here, and if they could hit 20 meters, they were going to be okay. And now it's gone to a whole new level. I mean,
then it was 20, and then it was 70 feet. You know, even like back in the days of like Nelson and Hoffa and Cantwell, I mean, I feel like 70 feet was like. I mean, anytime you see somebody throw 70 feet, it's like, wow. You know, Godina, like anytime.
Those guys would hit 64, 66.
Sure. But like, you could win meets throwing, 2150.
Yeah.
And I mean, look what those guys just did at the Diamond League. Like, Joe says that if you can't throw 22 meters anymore, like, it's just, you're not going to make it. Like, you have to.
You're not even going to make the Olympic team.
No, I mean, you're not. But you're literally not. Yeah. And so I think that's the new standard. Like I said, everything has really come up, even like from when I was in high school. If you threw 60 feet as a woman, like if you did that at the Olympic trials, there was a really good chance you were going to make a team.
Right.
And now, like, you might get 5th or 6th. Yeah. And like on like maybe not even do that well. And I think that a lot of that, I think that when the women started rotating, and I think that Joe Camarena is a good example. Like Jill's the first, I think Jill was one of the first. Jill might have been the first rotator in history, woman that threw 20 meters, but definitely in our country, and so like when that happens, it's like it opens up a whole new can of worms for everybody, and everyone's like, well, she was only throwing 58 feet when she was gliding, and now look at what she's doing when she's spinning. And then it's like, well, Jill's really not that tall, or like, but Jill's strong, like maybe we should start looking that direction. And like I'm telling you, after that happened, it changed a lot of things, I think, for women's throws. And then, obviously you had, like, at the time you had, like, Tia Brooks and obviously Michelle Carter that were still gliding. And I definitely think there's a place for that. Like, I think that the women, I don't necessarily know if I think it's as critical that they rotate. Obviously the men, you have to rotate. Like, there's no choice. Yeah, right. And the women probably, like, at the highest, like, if you can, like, get your technique to, like, perfect in the glide or perfect in the rotation, you probably will throw farther at perfect with the rotation. But there's been some studies on that have kind of said, like, the coach from Florida told me one time he saw a study that was like at like maximum velocity, like a perfect glide and a perfect spin with the women's ball, since it's so light compared to the strength levels that these women are able to achieve, that you can't make, it's not necessarily like proven that the ball will go farther.
Right.
Where the men's ball, like if you're talking about like strength to implement ratio, the men's ball is a lot heavier.
That's interesting.
I mean, but like when you think about it, like I know women I mean, obviously, like we all know Raven. Raven can bench a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like Raven's bench press is better than like I would say like 95% of all freshman boys that are like even like recruited, like literally. And she's throwing a 4K. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So it's like
carryover.
I mean, she's throwing a 4K. So yeah, but I mean, you know, the thing is, I think it boils down to like, you know, the speed velocity curve. It's like the whole thing is like, well, why do you get really strong? It's like you get really strong to make something feel light.
Mm-hmm.
And then the saying is like, well, you bench 500 pounds and I bench 300 pounds. You can probably make 225 move faster than I can.
Right.
So there's like they say that there's a point where it becomes like.
I was just listening to Adam Nelson talk about that diminishing returns.
Right.
And when he made the 2000 Olympic team, he was barely able to lift at all because he was injured. But the strength was there.
Yeah.
He was strong enough to throw 70 feet.
Right.
You know, how much.
Well, I think that there are minimums. You know, like I remember sitting in the stands at Nationals one time talking to Don Babbitt, telling me that he thinks that there are like minimums. Like if you have these strength levels and you're clean, your bench, and your squat, that you're functional enough to throw well if you have the right technique. You know, but what we do is I remember telling my coach in college one time, I was like, I want to be so strong that I can be in like the worst position like known to a human and still be able to throw 17 meters. And he's like, well, I don't necessarily know that like that's the best way to look at it, and it's probably not, but I meant that. And like
in high school, the way you threw, you were just a savage.
Right.
So I used to watch you throw, and you would come out all huffing and puffing and
yeah,
just hit that thing as hard as you could.
Exactly. And that worked out well for a while, and then it didn't anymore. You know, and that's the thing. I mean, like I see that in high school kids right now. It's like you love that in a kid. Like when you see a kid that's like, you know, super into it and just wants to like go out and like smash the ball, like part of me like loves that. But then part of me knows that there's going to be a point where like you get to a point where you only can go so far with that. You know, because you're like I wasn't technically terrible, but I wasn't like really very proficient in terms of like being able to be like at the level that I wanted to be in the long run. You know, and so I mean that's just a thing where, you know, when I went out to Olympic Training Center a couple of years ago and Art Venegas was out there, and obviously he coaches Joe. And he was talking to me, and he was coaching somebody, and he said to me, you have to train the attitude when you're in practice. And I think that, like, one of the hardest lessons that I learned as an athlete is training my attitude and my mentality to be in line with, like, what I needed to do technically. You know, because what I was doing in high school, and, like, what a lot of kids do in high school is just, like, I was just, like, running rampant. You know, and I just went as hard as I could every time. And just, like, I didn't know I didn't really know what I was doing. I mean, I was trying really hard, and I mean, it wasn't like it was wrong what I was doing, but, like, there's a whole nother element of, like, control and technique that, like, you have to achieve at a high level to be, like, world class. Yeah. And when you're a high school kid and you're just, like, trying to get strong and just smash the ball, like, it doesn't really align. So that's something you have to learn.
If it's a long throw, it's a good throw without even really. And so you're just trying to hit it harder and harder and harder.
No doubt. For sure.
And then you don't recover, especially when you get out of high school and you're not, 16 years old.
Definitely.
Anymore.
100%.
When do you do the weight training with the kids here too?
I do. So,
what kind of philosophy are we looking at here? I know Joe had spent some time at Westside, and then you've got some background with Judd. I kind of have a mixture of both those two, right? Because those are the two places I hung out the most. But where do you fit in there with your people?
Well, like I said, Judd was somebody that was like very influential to me from like a young age. I spent time in his program, and I did his programming for my weight training, and I would say I learned all of my basics from Judd. Like, I remember like having a workout, like literally like my high school was like up kind of like on a hill. If you went down the hill like a quarter of a mile, like Judd's house was like literally right there. So I remember, like not knowing.
Everybody knows where Judd lives, by the way. So.
Yeah, right. So yeah, no, he doesn't live there anymore, but he did. Yeah, he moved. They moved to Ashland, but I mean, like at that point, he was driving an hour every day from North Canton to Ashland. So anyway, like I remember being in the weight room, and like I remember one time, like I didn't know how to power climb, I didn't know how to do anything, and I would like ask Judd all the time like how to do stuff. But I remember they tried to teach me how to use straps, and I like unraveled them or something, and I like I didn't know how to put them on.
Yeah.
And I remember like getting so frustrated. And so I just like got in my car. I went down the hill. I pounded on Judd's door. And I was like, will you put these on for me? He put the straps on for me and wrote left on my left hand, right on my right hand, and like tied my hands to my steering wheel so that I knew how to do it when I got back. Like that's literally like how I learned how to do a lot of the things. It was like literally just, I don't know what an upright row is. Get in the car, drive down the hill, ask Judd.
Yeah,
like,
right.
you know, and he couldn't coach me because obviously like NCAA rules and everything. But like I'd ask him stuff all the time. Like I didn't know how to do things. So, I mean, I learned from him.
Yeah.
You know, I learned
from
a lot.
Your neighbor,
right?
Who just happened to be
yeah, I mean,
Olympian.
it's definitely that pre-existing relationship thing. So that's how we made it legal, anyways, with the NCAA. But so like I had a lot of ideas from like the way how I thought that things should be because of Judd.
Mm-hmm.
So I spent time at Ashland, and we did. You know, Judd's always doing something new and crazy.
Yeah.
You know, and I liked that. You know, I liked the mentality. I liked the environment there. I liked how they were always pushing. I liked how we never really knew what was going on, and it was just like something new every day. Like I liked the constant stimulus. Like that was like awesome for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I went to Kentucky, I had Doug Reynolds, and like his weight training was a little bit different. You know, he's like a West Coast guy, and it's like a little bit different like vibe with their lifting. So we, you know, I went through college with him, and then when I was done with college, I went and I trained with John Smith at Southern Illinois. So while I was at Murray State, I would go to Southern Illinois and work with John Smith. And so obviously, like his strength training is like, you know, very, very unique to what he does.
John's the smartest guy that no one's ever heard of.
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah. I mean, and the thing is, like in the throws world, like everybody has an opinion about John and like what he does, and you know, I would say that I'm pretty protective of John just because we're like super close. And the thing is, like, say whatever you want, but like he is always producing. And people even said things like when he left Southern Illinois and went to Ole Miss, and they're like, he's not gonna be able to do what he was doing at Southern Illinois in the SEC. Well, like he is, and he did.
Yep.
And so, you know, I feel like I have a very big toolbox that's of tools that are like very refined.
Mm-hmm.
So the people that have taught me what I know are the best.
Yep.
The best.
Yep.
You know, and then you even like couple that now with like, you know, talking to, you know, working with Joe in terms of just watching Joe and then talking to Art Venegas, who's Joe's coach. So it's like I talk to Art Venegas on the phone 3 times a week. So it's like, so now it's like I talk to Art, I have Judd, I have John Smith, and I have my college coach. You know, all those guys are like, literally, if you had asked somebody the top 10 throws coaches, like, of all time, those guys would be on everybody's list.
Sure.
They just would. And so those aren't guys that just, like, I happened to see at a conference or a convention one time and ask a few questions and wrote them down on a piece of paper. Like, those are people that, like, literally are trying to have taught me.
Right.
Like, and I've done their training, you know? And so when I'm writing my training, I feel like I have the ability to pick the things that I like from each one and kind of make it my own. And I think that that's something that like they all know that my stuff isn't exactly what their stuff is, but if they looked at what I was doing, they'd see little pieces from each of them, you know. And so because of that, like I feel super confident about the way we do things, you know. And like you said, even with Louie, like obviously I live in Columbus, you know, and like I'm always trying to find new ways to do things. I want to like pick people's brains. I feel like you can learn something from everybody that you talk to. Like the second that you think you know everything, like you're completely dead in the water.
Right.
And I think that Judd Logan is somebody that's really like instilled that in me, like constantly seek innovation and new ways to do things. But like when I went to Louie, you know, thinking about the way he does things, and I mean, a lot of the throws coaches think they're doing conjugate. You know, right? Because everyone thinks that they're doing conjugate, which is just, I mean, in reality, like conjugate is like max effort and then speed. Like in reality, that's what it is. But like the way that they do things over there, I mean, like literally, like Louie like put me in a powerlifting competition a few years ago. Like I was going in there like 2 or 3 times a week at 6 o'clock in the morning. It was like me and all those guys, and I was just like, I mean, they make me do. Like the thing is, like you go talk to Louie, and if you're physically able to do something, like you're gonna do it.
Yeah.
And it's not like just watch and like take notes. It's like do what I'm telling you to do. You know, and I was in there for maybe like 6 months or something, and I was like probably 30 pounds lighter than I was when I was throwing, and I was like literally like nearing some of my same like pulls, like deadlift and stuff. Like I was very surprised at what I was able to do with him. I don't necessarily know, like, I don't think it's a complete crossover between powerlifting and throwing. It's not, you know, and that's where we talked about like that, you know, the absolute strength piece. Like there's more to it than that, you know, and so, I do like more general prep stuff in the fall than John Smith does in terms of like, we do some circuit stuff. We do some like high intensity things. We do some like battle rope stuff. We do kettlebell work. We
You need
do,
to be in shape.
yeah, I mean, and that's the thing for me, I'm not going to have my throwers go run stadiums.
Sure.
Like, I have guys on my team that are, closer to 400 pounds than 300 pounds.
Right.
So that is not a good, like, bang for my buck.
Right.
And, like, Don Babbitt, who's somebody that I, like, really respect and think is, like, one of the best ever, obviously, like, what he did with Reese Hoffa and, what he's done at Georgia from, like, the time I was in high school and even before that until now, his guy wins the shot and the hammer at nationals. Like, I have so much respect for Don Babbitt, but he told me one time, and I'll like never forget this. It was we were at an In-N-Out Burger after Tucson Elite, and it was like 12:30 at night, and it was like me, Don Babbitt, A.G. Kruger, and like a bunch of people that were just sitting there like talking to Don, and he was like, you have to understand, like, as a coach, like, there are high risk activities and low risk activities, and you better pick your high risk activities wisely.
Yeah.
And so that always, like, really resonated with me, especially, like, when I'm writing strength programming, because it's not like we're just in the weight room. They're outside, they're throwing, they're pounding when they throw, they're jumping when they throw. Like, that is a complex movement. Like, it's taking something out of them. Like, everything is a touch, and so, like, that's something that I always, like, keep in the back of my head, and so I know that there is going to be a time when we're going to have to push. But, like, we're not power lifters where, like, you go in the weight room and you push for, like, a heavy squat and then you're done for the day.
Right.
Like, that's just not how it goes.
Right.
And when you're loading like that and then you're going outside and you're twisting, like, I like, really pride myself in, like, keeping these guys healthy. And I think that if you do things the right way and you prepare accordingly, like, you can push harder. And that's my, like, I believe that. Like, I think if you prep the right way, you can press harder. Instead of just, like, going, like, full speed from the jump. I think that's, like, when people get hurt.
Yeah, and the other thing is you bring them in the weight room, you squat them heavy, you pull them heavy, you send them out to throw. Maybe the next day you send them out to throw. Their legs are dead, so now they're not throwing as far. So they start to push a little harder. So maybe they're screwing up their technique. Maybe they're putting their foot in the wrong position. It's going to, lead to an injury. So the important thing is, as you know, is getting that weight room to put them in the best possible position to throw for, not to squat more.
For sure.
And that's a tough thing. When you look at our program, you talked about everyone saying that they do conjugate. If you look at our program, you're going to see a lot of Ash on it. You're going to see a lot of John Smith in it, and you're going to see a lot of Louie in it. It's definitely a conjugate program because I've been in the conjugate system and I understand the parameters of it. But it's such a funny thing you say that because there are so many people out there who say they're doing it when they're not. Just because you put chains on the bar doesn't mean you're
no.
You're doing
I mean, and that's the thing. Like, just like talking to, like, being at Westside was probably one of, like, the most invaluable, like, experiences that I've had. Same way, like, being at Ashland and being at Southern Illinois were some of the most, like just, like, being in that environment and actually being in it and watching it and talking to, like, the master of, like, that system was very, like, I learned a lot. I really did. I think Louie is very, very intelligent. He's very smart. He knows what he's doing. He has reasons for everything that he does. And the best thing to do when you're around Louie Simmons is just, like, shut up and listen.
How psyched was he that you came down?
No, it was awesome. And I think that he loves the throws. He
loves people from. I think he's been wanting someone from Ohio State to come and talk to her for years.
Yeah,
he
definitely.
Just wants to help.
He definitely wants. I mean, the thing is, and, like, I think that, like, everybody probably needs to understand, like, outside of, like, the track and field in the NCAA community, like, a lot of the things that people are like, well, why don't they just do this, or why don't they just go hire Louie, or why don't they just pay a throws coach if they, they don't understand that, like, sometimes there are rules that are, like, not like. I mean, obviously, like, Louie has, that powerlifting culture is a little bit different than, like, some of the things that you're allowed to do in the NCAA. And so, like, you have to just watch certain things. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I'm allowed to go over there and talk to Louie, but, like, Louie can't come over here and, like, train my kids. Like, that's just not, that's not allowed.
I don't think he'd want to. I mean, he might want to come and work with them once in a while, but he's not going to become a strength coach.
No, he doesn't want. He definitely doesn't want to be a strength. No, he would never. He doesn't like institutionalism. He doesn't want anybody telling him what to do. Like, I remember saying to Louie, like, why don't you go and like, do clinics or go out and do this? She's like, I need to stay right here in my gym and experiment and train my people.
Yeah.
And that's what he does. Like, that's the thing I love about Louis. Like, Louis is always trying to find a way to do something different. That's why when you see things on YouTube and you're just like, what the heck are they doing? But like, if you try to do what they're doing, you'll understand why they're doing it. Like some of the things I've seen them do on YouTube, and then I like go in there and actually like see it or actually do it. It's like when you see it on YouTube, you're like, you just literally tried to do something like that absolutely makes no sense to do. You put chains and bands and a pad and like, tie dumbbells to your feet. It's just like, what is even happening? But like I've seen them do things in there. Like he's very sports specific for certain things. And that's one of the things that I've figured out how to do some like drills and some different things, or like isolate certain parts of the throw from ideas that I've gotten that have been inspired by the things that I've seen him do that are just like, it makes things different, And so I just think I think that that's a big piece of the puzzle with everything. It's like constantly trying different things to figure out how to get it done.
Right. Well, and like you said, just rotating it and taking all those things from those people you learn from and taking what works for your people and throwing out the stuff that doesn't. Maybe coming back to that later at a different time because maybe it'll work with this athlete.
For sure.
It doesn't work for the athletes you have now.
Well, it's just like, it goes back to the thing that Judd even said with you. And, I've said this, quoting Judd a lot of times. It's like 90% of what I do set in stone. And I spend 90% of my time trying to figure out the next 10%.
Sure.
And I'd say that like as I've gotten farther along, I've seen that become more and more true for like what I'm doing, because there are certain things that I think need to happen no matter what. And whether that's in the training or whether that's technically or whether that's like lifestyle things, there are things that like you have to do, in my opinion. But then that last 10%, it's like, I didn't do very well with this part of the training last year. I didn't like how this went. Like, what can I do to make it better this year? And I think that like as you evolve as a coach, the more that you're willing to look at yourself, like I just finished my second master's at Ohio State and it was in sports coaching. And it was an application-based major, so like it wasn't like it was some biomechanics, but it wasn't like strictly biomechanics. It was more application-based in the sense of like we did like sports psych and sports science and nutrition and like so things that were a little bit more like straight up coaching. And we had it was called Coaches Pro Seminar was the class, and so every head coach from Ohio State came in and spoke to our class and like just kind of like gave their like story and then let us ask questions, and then some professional coaches came. And one of the things that almost every single coach that came in said was it's really important to self-reflect and to be able to be honest with yourself and to be able to look at yourself and be like, I didn't do very well with this.
Right.
And I think that a lot of people, and maybe sometimes like men that are like have been doing this for a while, you think that you know everything. I'm not saying that women don't think that, but like I don't have an ego that's big enough to not allow me to pick up my phone and call somebody and say, hey, look, like I'm really like not getting so and so to be able to do whatever I need them to be doing. What do you think about this? There's plenty of times that I've called Judd about like questions about like a drill for like an entry in the weight. John Smith, I talk to him all the time, and like all that's doing is making me better for my athletes. And I really think that that's something that has helped me early in my career, like get to the level that I wanted to be at, or at least to become competitive, was just being willing to like look at myself and be like, you're not there yet.
That's a maturity level that I think you have beyond your age, because, and maybe it is a guy thing. Man, when I was in my 20s, I thought I knew everything. And then when I was in my 30s, I thought I knew everything. And now when I'm in my 40s, I know that I don't know anything. So you're constantly, and Judd and I talked about it, and it's cool now that I have this tree of people that I trained and went through my system, and maybe went to Ashland or maybe went somewhere else, but now are strength coaches and track coaches, and I can call them on the phone and say, hey, what do you think about this? And I don't think the 25 or the 35-year-old Mark would have done that, because there's an ego behind there. But now, you're just trying to make your program as best as you possibly can. And I know we changed one whole day in our system this year just because I found out that, doesn't matter what I've done in the past, this isn't working. So we're going to revamp this whole thing, and we're going to try it. And if it doesn't work, we'll figure something else out. But it worked, and just made the program so much better, and it was just me having to reflect and say, this isn't working.
Right,
You're screwing
right.
this up. Let's figure it out.
I agree with that, like, 100%. And I would say that, like, in my opinion, like, if I had to explain to somebody, like, in my mind, like, how I interpret conjugate, like, conjugate to me is, like, the way that Louis does it and the way that I understand it from what he's told me. It's like, let's say you have a rim, like, and it's like a aluminum rim, and it's got like a dent in it, and you straighten out that dent, and then you see like another one, and you're constantly trying to find out where it's bent and how you can straighten it out. And it's literally like finding, and this is like, I learned functional weakness stuff from Judd, who I think is, maybe that's a Poliquin thing, like, so functional weakness being like, oh, like, I'm really good at getting the bar off my chest like 3 inches, and then I fail at the top, like, well, your triceps are weak.
Right.
You know, and so it's like isolating functional weaknesses and then like attacking them with like full vengeance. And like for me, I think that that's something that I've applied like literally to every facet of my life. Like, where am I weak? And it doesn't, and I'm not even saying just like as a coach, like what have I had problems with? Like, where do I stumble?
Yeah.
And then being able to have like the personal wherewithal to be able to say like, okay, now I need to work on this. And for me with throwing, a lot of the times I see some of these like mental breaks or like these places where people are constantly banging their head against the wall, and you'll see like it's like a similar type thing that to problems they'd have like in their normal personal life.
Right.
Like for me, I feel like when I thought, and I think in some ways I still think, like I had a direct correlation in my brain from like work hard to like achieve. So like the thing that I loved about track, and the reason that I think that I got like kind of obsessed with it when I was younger, is like, I mean, like literally this is like what happened. We all played basketball together, me and all my friends, 7th grade. And like after basketball I was like, all right, what are we going to do? Like, all right, let's go to track. So I wanted to run, and I like was on like the 4x2 and like 4x4, and then I went over and threw, and I threw the shot, and like I would win all the time when I threw the shot, and I couldn't really throw the discus. Like I could throw all right, and I threw like 60 feet or something in a discus, 70 feet maybe.
Yeah.
But I could never do it all. Like, I'd always throw the shot, like, around the same range. And I could never get the discus. And so I went to this meet, and I think I threw the shot in, like, 7th grade. I think I threw it, like, 33 feet or something. And this guy comes up to me, and he's like, you threw the shot 33 feet? And I was like, yeah. He's like, you threw the disc, like, 58? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, if you throw the shot 33 feet, you should throw 100 in the discus. And I looked at him, and I was like, are you kidding me? Like our school record in middle school was like 35 feet by a girl that had gone on to be a state champion, and I was like really like trying to throw 35 feet. Yeah. And the school record for the disc was like 99. And I was like, there's just no way. So the guy's like, let me see what you do. Like, I'm at like a middle school meet, you know, and the guy's, so I'm like pulling the discus back on myself, and it's like coming out of the back of my hand, like out of my, so I didn't know. So he shows me like the helicopter drill and the one where you like throw it up and catch it, the bowling thing. Mm-hmm. So, all right, so I practiced that for like a few days, and then like before the next meet, which is like, so this is like on a Saturday, on a Tuesday, I went over like by myself, and I started like doing that, and I threw 106 feet in the discus. And I literally, like, from that moment, I was just like, it blew my mind. Because like, and this is what I say to people, like, did I get 40 feet better? 100% no. Like, I figured out how to do something. I changed something that I was doing, and it made that much of an impact. And so, like, from that point forward with track, it was just like, I loved the fact that I was like, change something, it gets better. Get stronger, gets better. And so I always just assumed that it was always just going to be like that. You know, like, oh, I'm working really hard. I'm trying to fix things. I'm pushing. Like, I'm doing all these things. Like, I should throw farther. Like, and the thing is, like, I got to a point where I remember my college coach one time, I was like really struggling, and I was just like going crazy. And he was just like, you're in such like terrible positions. Like, why do you think you deserve to throw far?
Right.
From bad positions. Like, no one can throw far out of those positions. Yeah. And it really like changed my mentality of like, okay, like, it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter how hard you're working. Like, no one cares how hard you're working. Right. Like, no one cares. Like, I think that like a lot of high school kids and like a lot of people that were successful early on in like throwing, it's like when you're playing basketball and you hustle more, like, you play better. You know what I'm saying? Sure. Like, you're better on defense when you're like trying harder. And so, but it's not the same correlation.
You have to be a little bit of a nerd, a little bit of a brain surgeon too.
Right.
I mean, you can't. There's no dumb throwers who throw far, especially technical ones.
Right.
You know, because you have to be. number one, you have to be able to understand the technique, but you have to have that positive self-talk too. Right? Okay, that one sucked. But if you get your hip around just a little bit more,
Right.
go a little bit further, instead of just trying to hit it constantly harder and harder.
You have to have like a pitcher's mentality, just like somebody like slams a grand slam out of the park, and like you're still on the mound, like next batter up, like you can't. Back. Yeah, and I think that's tough. You know, I think that's a hard lesson to learn. But I think that the people that have been successful over time are really good at doing that.
I think that's hopefully if anyone takes anything from this podcast. For a young kid listening, that's what you have to take from it, because you're going to have your shit meets and your shit practices, but then your bad throws, but then there's always another one coming. So you gotta refocus and get back on the horse and go after it. When you're recruiting kids, I know you're looking at all different sizes and you're probably getting all different sizes, but is there a mental aspect to some of these kids you look at and think, yeah, this kid's going to throw for me? Maybe he's not throwing 20 meters right now, but he's got what it takes.
Yeah, I think that, like, you know, one of the things that I think that people don't really understand or see is, like, when I go to, like, a meet, especially like I'm at the state meet and I'm watching these kids, I love it when I see them in, like, a defining moment. So with that being said, like, I love it when I see a kid that has 2 fouls and is supposed to win a meet. Not because I, wanted them to have 2 fouls, but, like, I want to see what you're going to do. Yeah. Okay? Because you're going to get into situations like that in college. And it shows a lot about your character. You know, I like to see when kids are, like, I've seen situations where kids are just, like, caught up in the moment. They're at the state meet and they get tight. And they're going up to their coach and they're just like, oh, yeah, I don't feel anything. And just, like, being short with their coach or acting frustrated and kind of getting, like, defeatist. And it's like, you notice those types of things. Sure, like I'm looking at that. Like, the thing is, by the time these kids get to the state meet, you kind of have an understanding of, like, what they can do or, like, where what their level is. Mm-hmm. So for me, the state meet is more about looking at these kids and being like, what is your attitude like? Like, what's your mentality? Like, what are you going to do when somebody passes you? And I've seen a lot of kids at the state meet that have surprised me in good ways and bad ways. It's like, it's just one of those things. I think the state meet is like a very, like, it's a personal thing for me. Like, obviously, I won the state meet here. I understand, like, it's a very, like, that's a big achievement for a high school kid to win a state championship. So when you come here, like, emotions are high and, your family's here and there's more people here than you've ever had at any meet you've been to before. But it's like the best possible way that I can evaluate a kid's mentality, right. And the thing is, it's like, you have to understand, if you can't stand up at the state meet, good luck in the Big Ten.
Yeah, right.
Good luck in the Big Ten. Like, I literally felt like my senior year when I was at the state meet, like, I was obviously trying to, like, I broke the state record and I was trying to break the state meet record. So, like, that was the goal. Like, there was no, like, oh, cool, you won, congratulations. Right. Like, everybody wants you to just be happy that you won, and so if I wouldn't have broken the state record, like, that would have been, I might as well have just, like, not made the final. Right. That's how I felt. And so it's like, I understand that, like, you're going in there with, like, a certain mentality of, like, what you want to achieve, and sometimes it doesn't go, like, exactly how you want. But, like, at the end of the day, if you can't walk into that meet and know that, like, without a doubt that you're going to win or, like, dominate or, like, at least get in the top, like, you're going to struggle at the level that we're at here. Right. You know what I'm saying? Because, like, here's the thing. Like, back in the day, like, in my day, okay, I was top 3 in the country in the shot in high school, okay, 50 feet 10, almost 51 feet. Some years in like nationally, like in the past 5-10 years, like that would have been like barely top 10. Okay, with some of the, I mean, like recently you've had a girl, obviously throwing 57 feet to break the national record in the shot in high school. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So like 51 isn't that big of a deal anymore. Well, like when I went to college, I got second in the SEC indoor my freshman year, and I got second outdoor, and I threw 51 feet in high school. So I think I threw 52 indoor my freshman year, or maybe 51, and I got second place in the SEC. Like, that, you have to throw, like, what I won at, you might not win anymore. Like, it's just, the level is way up. So if you're looking at a kid and they're throwing, like, 48 feet in high school, and then they go to the state meet and they throw, like, 42 feet or something, a girl, like, even if you're throwing 48 feet in the Big Ten, like, you're not going to make the final. Right. So I want to see that a kid is going to be able to come in with, like, that type of pressure and expectation and, like, rise to the occasion and perform. Like, I just think that it's very important for me to be able to see these kids puff up when it's time to go.
Right.
And when there's other people there that are like in your world, so like that so if they have a good throw, they could beat you. If that's like, because this is the thing, these kids go to these meets and they take a safety throw, okay, in round one, because you throw 45 feet in the shot and you're a girl, and if you throw 39 feet, you're making the final at every single meet you go to pretty much,
right.
Except for maybe when you get to like districts and regionals. Okay, 39 feet in the shot, if you're a 45-foot shot putter, absolutely not going to work.
Yeah.
For anybody. So that's the thing, like these kids come to college and they want to take a safety throw in round one, and it's like, dude, you need to PR to make the final,
right.
But you don't know how to come out swinging.
Sure.
I'd rather have the kid that comes out swinging and like fouls out,
right.
but they put it out there. Figure out how to stay in the ring. Like Joe says, I said to Joe, I was like, what do you like? I mean, like, do you like worry about fouling? He's like, every time I step in the ring, I assume I'm gonna foul. Like, I go so hard, like every time I throw, I assume I'm gonna foul, and like if I happen to stay in, like, then that's like a bonus. Like that's like literally
a great way to look at it.
I mean, like he told me that, and I was just like, are you serious? But he's like dead serious. He's like, I assume I'm probably gonna foul because that's how fast I have to go.
Yeah. People used to talk about Adam Nelson. They get so worked
Joe loves
up
Adam Nelson
about how he would foul all the time, and I loved it because that dude was
going after
all
it. Yeah,
out.
I think that probably Adam Nelson is somebody that Joe really, really, really respects, obviously, but somebody that I think Joe watched, growing up, and I think that he likes the way that, like you said, Adam just like went for it every single time, and I think that like there's a lot to be said for that. There's a lot to learn from that, but like coming out with in your first round in a safety throw, like, these guys will do that. The 22-meter guys will come out at like 21 meters or whatever, but then you got to start throwing. You know what I mean?
Maybe for your Olympics to get into the
right. But like
whatever.
the thing is, sometimes these guys come out of the gate so slow that they can't turn it up.
Yeah.
And it's a lot easier to go swinging for the fences when you know you're going to make the final. Or like I said, if you're a 45-foot shot putter and you throw 42 feet, you know you're going to win the meet, so you can go strike.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But like, what happens when there's another girl that can throw 42 feet or 43 feet? I really like being able to watch what these kids can do when there's other people around them that are at their level.
Yeah.
That's really important for me as a coach to see. And like, that's one of the things I look at. Like, you look at how far they throw, but then you look at where they threw far.
Yeah.
When I see a kid that comes, like, at the end of the year, they throw their farthest from, like, districts, regionals, and state, and then maybe they go to New Balance and they throw far, I'm like, okay, that's a kid that wants to play. When you see a kid that only throws far in dual meets, you're like, okay, well, like, you're only able to throw far when you're, like, in your comfort zone and when you're beating everybody by, 2 meters.
There's no pressure on you at all.
Right. And then you have to be able to handle that pressure at this level.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah, it's, you watch these kids. I mean, some of them, a 60-foot guy shot putter may not see another 60-foot shot putter until they get to states.
Right.
So all year long they've been beating up on 38-foot shot putters and, screwing around and throwing 60. Now all of a sudden you throw them into the dance and they got a little bit of fire. You had a really good class when you were in high school because we had a lot of people at that state meet.
We did.
I had Kelly there when I had Kelly Moore that I was coaching in Division II. You were in Division I, and then was Jimmy Pacifico there too?
He was my class.
Discus thrower.
Yeah.
That was in his flight that year too. Jimmy was all 5'7", 5'8".
And that's another example of a guy that just ran after the ring. He just went for it every time.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's the thing. Another thing I tell people, like, when I was in high school and I was a sophomore, I think I threw 44 feet as a sophomore. But there was a girl from Jackson that was in my conference that threw 43, and then there were 2 girls from Glen Oak that threw over like 42 and 43. So like literally, like I knew, and all 4 of us, so we were all in the same conference, all in the same district, all in the same region, and all 4 of us were top 8 at the state meet. Yeah. And so like I didn't know that like 44 feet was pretty huge, good. Right? Well, I didn't know, like, because I knew that if I didn't throw 44 feet, that I was going to get beat by one of them. Yeah. And that just, like, wasn't an option. So, like, if I would have been somewhere else and, like, I threw 42 feet and I was winning by 5 feet, I probably wouldn't have been as pressed as I was to, like, throw farther. Sure. And I think that, like you were saying, like, there's so much to be said. And, like, Louis talks a lot about this thing with the training partners, too. It's, like, or just being able to see what other people are doing. Yeah. Those other 3 girls, like, elevated me more quickly than, like, any coach or anything I could have done on my own because, like, we were setting like a different standard, and then like that's like what I'm saying about what we're trying to do here. Like maybe when I came in over here, if you threw 19 meters in the shot, that was like good. Like, I want my group to know, like the men's shot putters to know, like, until you're throwing 20 meters, like, it's just like there's no like, oh, you're pretty good, or oh, there's no middle ground. Like, if you want to be at the level that like we expect here, that's what the level is. Yeah. Like, that's the expectation.
Get on it. Get after it. Start training.
Exactly.
Yeah,
100%.
That's I've always tried to create those groups within my facility. So when I was coaching throwers back when you were in high school, you know, Kelly was a 43-foot shot putter, but there was 4 of the girls in the gym that were 40-foot shot putters. So
right.
I think the only reason she threw that far was because she had these girls right behind her in the same conference that were all pushing her. And if you can develop that here, like you said, just like Westside, just like Ashland, just like all these places, yeah, your system is fantastic, I'm sure. And your facilities are all fantastic, I'm sure. But if you can get that training group to go along with those two things, forget about it.
Well, if you look at, like, you know, some of, like, the places that have been, like, people look at as, like, historically, like, very successful. Like, if you look at, like, what Venegas was doing, like, at UCLA, and the type of people he had over there, like, and you listen to him talk about his groups, like, it was just, like, everybody was out there every day, like, just trying to get after it. And, like, and you, like, and I kind of had that at Kentucky. You know, when I was at Kentucky, we had 8 people that were first-team All-Americans. Like, that's a lot of All-Americans in one group. Yeah. You know, and the thing was, it's like, if you weren't an All-American or you weren't going to nationals, like, we literally, like, didn't know why you were there.
Right.
And that's, like, literally how we felt. Like, I remember there was a guy that was, like, he got, like, 8th in the SEC and was, like, made regionals and stuff, and we, like, wanted our coach to cut him. But, like, dude, he messes around. Like, he doesn't really, you know, and he did. But, like, we were, like, if you're not an All-American in this group, like, what are you even doing here?
Right.
You know, and I think that that's a really difficult thing to cultivate. But I think that, like, having everybody on the same page of, like, what the expectation, what good is, constantly being able to redefine what good is. Yeah. I think that is, like, how you become successful. You know, and, like, as a coach, I was out this summer, Joe and I went out to Los Angeles to see Art, and we were sitting there, and he says to me, you know, he says stuff to me sometimes to, like, kind of, like, test my mind. And he was like, what makes a great coach? Like, what do you think a great coach is? And I was like, well, like, somebody that can get their kids to, like, get it together at, like, a championship. Like, somebody that, like, can get their kids ready to go when it's time to go. And he said, no, absolutely not. This has nothing to do with it. And I was like, okay, like, what? He's like, a good coach is somebody that can get their athlete to do what they want them to do, how they want them to do it. Mm-hmm. And I think that, like, there's a whole lot more to that than just the X's and O's. Yeah. And I think that that's why, like, Judd Logan is successful the way that he is. I think that Doug Reynolds, my college coach, was really good at that too. And I think that, you know, John Smith, I think that one of the things that he has that allows him to be able to do that at a really high level is, like, exactly what you said, just having other people around him. Like, he had a freshman girl over there this year that was, like, she didn't throw far in high school, but she was like, she looks like Connie Price Smith's actual child.
Yeah,
like,
right.
Like, I call her Baby Connie, and she just, like, looks at me like, why are you speaking? And I looked at her, like, she threw, like, 20 meters. We were at this meet at Vanderbilt, and so, like, Gwen Berry was there. Janaea, his girl that won nationals in the weight, or she won in the hammer, she was there. Geneva McCall was there. My girl Jessica Ramsey was there. There were, like, 5 girls over 75 feet. Like, it was the best meet in the world last year, literally, world. And my girl Sade was over there, who was the Big Ten champion in the weight, and top 10 of all time in NCAA history in the weight. And this girl, like, barely makes the final, or I think she gets 8th or something. And she's just, like, she threw 20 meters. She's a freshman.
Yeah, crazy.
And she's just, like, sitting in the corner, like, about to cry. And I, like, looked at her, and she doesn't know me, but she doesn't really probably know that John and I are, like, that close, because she's just a freshman. And I was like, you know why you're going to be really good? And she just looked at me like, oh, why are you talking?
Yeah.
You know, and I was like, because you think you suck.
Right.
That's why you're going to be really good. Because every day she goes to practice, she sees these girls throwing 80 feet in the weight, and she's barely, you know, not even throwing 70 yet, or right at 70 feet yet, as a freshman. Yeah. And she thinks she sucks. You know, and it's the same thing, like, when I was over at Southern Illinois, Deanna Price was over there. Obviously, Deanna Price is the American record holder in the hammer. When I was at Southern Illinois, it was, like, Gwen Berry, Brittany Riley, who has the world record in the weight, and Geneva McCall. And so all those girls were throwing over 77 feet in the weight. Which at that time, like, that, no one was doing that, okay? And Deanna Price was there as a freshman. And Deanna was small and skinny and, like, just, you know, they called her White Tiger because she was, you know, the White Tiger, and just, like, did her own thing in the corner. Like, I would literally watch Deanna just turn and turn and turn and drill and drill and drill in this net. the entire time I was at practice, and I said to John Smith, this is like one of John Smith's favorite stories. Like, he wants me to tell this story to everybody. I looked at him, and like Deanna was like literally cussing herself out in the corner about like not throwing her drill right. And I looked at John, and I was like, what's up with that girl? Like, who is that? He's like, oh, that's Deanna Price. She's going to be really good someday. And like when Deanna won nationals and broke the NCAA record, and when Deanna made the Olympic team, like I just remember like thinking about that and just being like, that girl didn't have nobody was watching her.
Right.
Like nobody cared about
just a
her at
psycho
all.
Over the
just
corner.
over in the corner doing her own thing. And that is such a rare thing to see like these days.
Yeah.
Because I feel like everybody wants to be constantly like praised and affirmed and like just told that they're doing everything right with every step they make. And I think that a lot of that has to do with just like the instant gratification of like the internet age and everything. You don't see people that are just like, I don't need any of that. Like, this is about me.
You want to be good, you have to be in a big room full of savages who all want you to fail so
right.
they can succeed.
Exactly.
And you just have to fight through that.
Totally.
I know you have to get to practice. I want to ask you one more thing before we go and close on. What do you love about throwing? What's your favorite part of it? Why do you love it so much? Put you right on the spot.
Yeah. I mean, and I've thought about this before. So I love throwing because it's never perfect. I love throwing because it can always get better. It's never complete. I think that that's definitely like my favorite thing about it. Like, there's no such thing as like, that's it. Like, that was everything. And I think that that's part of the reason why some people have a hard time like letting it go, because they look at it and they're like, well, what if I was doing this different, or what if this was better? So I love the fact that it's a work in progress all the time.
100%. I love it.
100%. Thank you so much.
Good luck, and I wish you guys the best.
No, thank you for having me
down. This has been great.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much.
Muffet at Ohio State University. This has been the Refined Savage. See ya.